For a brief moment, the STI looked like it was going to have a class all to itself.
But thankfully, the Focus RS is coming, and the Mark 7 generation Golf R is already here to keep things interesting. It's the 2015 Golf R, the car I've been waiting to drive for a long time. You know, every time I go to Europe, specifically Germany, I see this car parked in town, and I can't wait to drive it. I feel like the Golf R has been talked up so much as, okay, we kind of got the last one wrong, but don't worry, we did it right for the 2015 car.
The Golf R replaced the old R32. We drove the first generation Golf R and it was pitched kind of strangely in the marketplace. The original Golf R had the power and the stats of a WRX or a Lancer Rally Art, and yet was pitched at the larger Evo and the STI. Here, they've cranked it up even further, and they've made it a direct competitor to the Subaru STI.
You know, I gotta say, it's lovely to be back in the STI. If you didn't catch our last review, we liked this car a lot. Now, there's a few things about it that we don't love.
We reviewed this car last year alongside the Evo and the prior generation STI to talk about how has the STI changed and improved. We also talked about the fact that the STI was kind of in a class by itself because its main rival, the Evo, was going away.
So if you're shopping for something just outright performance, just the all-wheel drive, all-arounder, high-performance car, this is what you're shopping. It's the STI and the Golf R.
Styling-wise, the Golf does what the 911 does. And what I mean is it's a slow refinement of the styling. There's nothing radical going on here. They just keep slightly tweaking the lines. I do think that the Mark 7 looks a bit angrier than the Mark 6, and I like that, but it's a Golf. It's a classic shape, why change it?
It is pretty. I like what they've done, but for the R, this shouldn't be the car that's for everybody. It's only for enthusiasts. It's not different enough from GTIs and normal Golfs that you instantly recognize it. I want the fenders to be flared more. I want it to sit and squat more than it does. I kind of feel like Volkswagen needs to step up to the craziness Subaru is doing. They're just so nuts and you can't get around it and you can't believe that the car does these things.
Styling and interior-wise, there's no competition here. The STI just loses out to the Golf. It looks classier on the outside, and of course the interior is in a whole other class. The interior on the Golf R feels like a car that's about $40,000. The interior on the STI does not. This isn't a beautiful interior, but it's not stark, and it's very usable, and there's a lot of tech going on. Everything is placed pretty well. This is a very usable performance four-door car.
The interior, it's all the quality that we love about the Subaru done in far finer materials. Everything you touch is just, it's delightful. You can just, it oozes quality.
Truthfully, a lot of the same hard plastic that's in the Subaru can be found in this Golf, but it's just hidden better. I love the gauge cluster here. It's very clear, it's interesting. It doesn't feel $10,000 to $15,000 more than a base Golf, but it is an excellent interior. The seats in here are good, but they're not amazing. I actually like the STI seats more when I'm pushing hard. These are perfectly good, comfortable seats, infinitely adjustable, so you could make this a huge, long freeway blast road trip car and make it quiet, have it in comfort setting, and just enjoy.
That's the thing, I gravitate towards being in this car. When we're done shooting and we just have to drive, I gravitate towards this because it's the comfortable place to be. It's the nice place to be. I think when you initially get into a car, that's very telling too. How easy is it to just acclimate yourself instantly with the character of the car? It took both Todd and I a while. Now I appreciate it. I know what the throttle's going to do, but you have to dip way down in there. I mean, well above 4,500 RPM. It's touching 5, and then you think, okay, here's some performance.
So what you simply have to do in the Golf R is switch everything as aggressive as it possibly gets. You got to take the transmission over into sport mode. You got to change your mode here to get it into race mode. Normal isn't enough. You've got to be in full race mode. And now you can hold down the ESC button and wait for it. Get it to turn off. The last version that we drove, it had the 6-speed and the DSG wasn't available. This version, they've introduced it with the DSG first. The 6-speed manual will be available next year. Generally, I'm a pretty big fan of the DSG. I think it's a pretty good gearbox. It is somehow outmatched in this car.
Yeah, it is. Trying to hold third here, hold a gear, and I just barely feather it a little bit. Well, the car upshifted at that point. I think, no, that's not what I told the transmission to do. But even the upshifts, they're not, wow, this car is angry deep down somewhere inside. No, it's just more of the same.
The combination of the gearbox and the throttle mapping really hinders this car. You can actually get a quarter of the way into the gas pedal and the car hasn't changed anything. Plus you have to get halfway to the floor to really wake the engine up and have it go, oh, you mean power now? Yes, I do. It's every bit as powerful as that STI, and yet in most situations it doesn't feel like it.
As soon as I got in this car, I remembered how bonkers it is. This car is just excited all the time.
This STI is only marginally more powerful than the Golf R. It's kind of a wash, they're so close. However, the STI feels more powerful right away. You start to breathe into the throttle and the engine responds. Now, the Golf R can go into full stealth mode. You can go into comfort, you can just cruise, you can blend with traffic. But then when you ask it to be an aggressive, hair-on-fire car, it's not as readily willing to do it.
The power is great. Finally, nearly 300 horsepower. It's what this car needed. Okay, that's really quick. Brakes are strong. All of that is there. Yes, it's sharper and harder and faster than the GTI, but not by much, and that's the problem. When you're rolling and you're into it, this car's nimble and fast and fun. I do like the feedback, I do like the feel, despite the front-wheel drive bias. You add power to a corner, that's where it really starts to settle down and make itself at home.
Now, the all-wheel drive system here is a 4-motion Haldex all-wheel drive, and you rarely, if ever, can sense any push from behind you. It just feels like a really well-sorted front-wheel drive hatch. And isn't that what the GTI is anyway? Now, this generation of the STI is doing more torque vectoring than it's done before. It's trying harder to put more individual power to an individual wheel. Now, on the front side, besides differentials, it's also using brake vectoring to try to guide the power. And honestly, I don't love the steering feel in this car. The issue is that with all that torque vectoring, and especially with the brake vectoring, it actually tugs at the wheel. It almost feels like a front-wheel drive torque steer thing, except it's pulsing. It's not a consistent torque steer you're fighting. It pulses as the car tries to hold the corner.
Pendulum-like steering. That's the only thing I can really equate this to. Every time you turn into a corner, it wants to swing back the other way. It's sort of tugging at you. I have come to appreciate the manual control of the center differential a lot more in this car, because what I did was hold the car into a corner like this and dial it up and down to really feel the difference.
Once I sit here and I put it in Sport Plus and I push all of the power toward the rear that I can, this STI starts to feel like I want an all-wheel drive sports car to feel. It's got good balance, I get the sense that I am being pushed more than just pulled, and the steering quits fighting me as much.
What's great is the all-wheel drive gives you that little bit of extra confidence to chuck into a corner even harder than you did on the last one. I mean, I'm all for rear-wheel drive cars, but this just gives you that little extra bit.
There's less steering effort in the STI than in the Golf R, but there's not much information here. I feel like I get more from the Golf in spite of its variable electric steering.
The STI is like your neighbor's dog. I mean, in a friendly way. The dog just is thrilled to see you, jumps out of its skin, wants to play frisbee. It wants you to know that it likes you, it's ready to play, and it's just happy to see you. And you think to yourself, you know what? I should get a dog. It's just eager and ready to go. And for that, I feel like the STI is honest about its intentions.
It begins with that wing out back. You know the kind of car you're in. There's no hiding from the performance in the STI. It doesn't ever go away. It remains loud and brash and fun. In spite of my issues with the steering, I find the STI an incredibly easy car to drive very quickly. In fact, the STI is easier to drive fast than the Golf R.
This car needs to be far more nuts than it is. It just needs to be somehow the Germans brought the noise, and it's just bonkers and nuts and not for everybody. It still feels like some more performance, but it's for everybody. I disagree with that. I want it to transform somehow. I want this car to become something that it just isn't.
Now, there are those of you out there that are just saying, well, you know what, if you tune it to this and you put some bolt-ons. The problem is we only test cars in stock form because that's the way the manufacturer said, you know what, we're done. That's what the car is supposed to be. So we test them in stock form because the problem is the minute you say, oh, we'll give it a chip tune and bolt these things to it, you can do that to the STI as well. And then where does it end? If the STI is that always happy and ready to go dog, you know, its tail's wagging and it's pulling at the leash, the Golf R is the dog you have to wake up first before you take it to a walk.
You're waiting for me to say, this has solved it. I've been waiting for me to say that too, and I'm coming away wishing I liked it better than I do. Don't get me wrong, it's fun to drive this car, and funny enough, at the end of the day, when we're finished driving and we need to drive the cars back home, I gravitate towards the Golf R. I want to be in this car.
Driving the Golf R for a while, I realized this is a car you have to drive in anger. You're grabbing it by the scruff of the neck and saying, we're going to do this now. And then it goes, oh, okay, I can do this. In many ways, it feels like the Golf R is the matured, grown-up version of the STI idea. And that's really cool, except it makes me realize I'm just a child.
We sure have given Subaru a lot of love over the past year in 2014. We drove a lot of cars from them, and there's a good reason why.
Well,
they
they
make
had great
fantastic driving machines.
Even the stuff that wasn't their hot stuff sold like crazy last year. They had their best year ever. STI was briefly in a class by itself, and now Golf R working its way into that class, second generation of this car.
Well, guess what? I've been waiting for this car. Every time I go to Europe, I see this car, and I'm kind of drooling, actually. I'm thinking, this is the car that's going to solve it all. Finally, the German car to compete against everything else, and it's going to do it right, and it's going to be the end-all everything.
And you're thrilled.
I'm not.
Really? You didn't get enough out of the first gen. I remember you were very
No, I
disappointed. You wished
didn't.
that the first gen Golf R was better than it was. And I actually think this is an improvement.
It can't be just an improvement, though. It has to be amazing. We were talking about this very thing. We said, well, now the R is just kind of keeping up with the STI. What if we had said that the other way around? What if we said, well, now the STI is keeping up with the Golf R?
Fair point.
That's a
Fair
different
point.
outlook. Just
You're
the way
right.
it's phrased, that's an entirely different viewpoint.
It'd be cool if the Golf R in the second generation dropped and now it was the car to beat. Here's the thing I actually wonder about the Golf R that I debated while driving. Is it that much better than the GTI? And I don't think you can feel the all-wheel drive, and it is definitely more powerful, but it's not like, look at me, I'm powerful. You've got to dig for it. So there's a part of me that just goes, the interior's not any different. Why not just get a GTI? If this felt very all-wheel drive and it felt hair on fire, it'd be like, you've got to get the Golf R. This is the bigger, better GTI, which is not a bad thing. The GTI is a great car. A bigger, better GTI, that's good news.
Right.
But I don't know that it's a leap up from the normal GTI that you go, you know what, you better get yourself a Golf R.
It just isn't the frantic nature. It just, in a sense, is dishonest. And I think as being dishonest with itself, it sounds sort of weird, making a people personality on a car, but
You're talking about at least the STI says this is all I am.
this is all I am, this is who I am, and this is what I do. It makes no bones about it. It just sort of puts itself out there. If you've got to dig for performance, you have to bring a snow shovel to try and find the performance.
I don't think
My
it's
point
that
is-
bad. I don't think it's that bad.
Why should you have to buy your performance car and then do something to it to kind of make it how you want? Because it is great. There's so many things to love about it. But my list of not loving things is just as long.
Well, you know what I feel like? I feel like the Golf R needs a BMW button. It needs a button that makes it go nuts in a touch of a button. You hit every button in this to make it go as hard as you want, and then you get deep in the pedal and you go, oh wait, I'm kind of getting there now, I gotta dig. The M cars, you hit M and it ignites.
It transforms the car.
And that's the thing I do love about the M cars. This needs an R button. There's the conclusion. The Golf R needs an R button for actual
Just
wheel
like the
performance.
BMW has the M button.
Exactly.
I'd be fine with that,
Exactly.
really.
That's a weird conclusion.
It sounds like we're agreeing here, which we kind of are.
We are, but the thing is, we're agreeing about the fact that the STI is more honest and the Golf R might be too mature. Which is that a conclusion or is that just like a therapy session?
You're going to have to decide for yourself.
And you will. We're welcoming comments now.
I could easily see myself owning this car. This has to be a benchmark for future cars, for everything else. I'm looking forward to the next generation of the STI. This is so good. What would the next one be?
But it does feel like a full, no apology sports car with 4 doors and 4 usable seats. The Golf R has these capabilities, but in the STI, they're just available. In the Golf, you have to go digging, you have to root them out and convince the car to come play.
I wanted this car to be better, and I even had high hopes. I really did. Coming into this, I thought, I actually might buy one. I mean, I know it's kind of a little bit more expensive, but if it's everything I think it is, I think I might buy one. But it isn't.
I realize I want this car to blow the STI out of the water. That's what I really want for it. Maybe that's asking too much. Now, it's far more versatile. This is, if you're gonna have one car to do everything, including go nice places and take big road trips, yes, you want the Golf R. But I struggle with, why didn't you just get the GTI?